15 seconds to net time. The count will begin now. 9, 8.
Working for Granada was like a cross between working for a second-hand clothes shop and the Arts Council.
7, 6.
You had to come in each day with some fresh idea or you felt a little guilty.
5, 4.
It was always, I think, a kind of battle between Granada and the BBC as, you know, who could create the most attention.
3. Take London.
Granada, the country's longest established independent television station, began transmitting on May the 3rd, 1956. In a special program on its opening night, it showed its self-assurance and sense of style by associating itself with the standards of the BBC.
This is the BBC television service at Alexandra Palace.
Those are the actual words spoken by Jasmine Bligh, which opened the first television service in the world. Now, why should Granada, the latest competitor of the BBC, want to talk about it on its opening night? The right man to answer that question is Granada's chairman, Mr. Sidney Bernstein. Sidney, why are you doing this?
Well, it's a kind of valentine to the BBC. I've watched their television service since it started, and I respect what they've done. I only hope we can do as well. Doesn't matter where you go, throughout the world, you find the BBC have led the field, even in America.
Well, as you know, I share your respect for the BBC. But tell me, what do you propose to do to improve on their performance?
That's the $64,000 question. They're my competitors, and I'm not saying.
He wanted to do as well, and maybe he wouldn't, maybe better. And he was also challenging the BBC to say, if I do this show about you, is to say I'm going to beat you at it.
Now, according to the historians, the House was...
As I remember from those days, the BBC certainly needed to be challenged, being at that time complacent, cautious, and dull.
In spite of that, and in spite of the many disadvantages that must have accrued to that, your family have lived here ever since.
Yes, we've lived here ever since, and we hope to live here for a great number of years to come.
Splendid.
Mm-hmm.
It was the aim of commercial television, led by show business entrepreneurs like Sidney Bernstein, to take us into bolder, brighter viewing. As a supporter of the Labour Party and its Puritan ethos, he was initially opposed to commercial television, as also was Denis Forman, about to become Sidney's right-hand man.
I was very much of the view that I'd prefer the BBC to continue as a monopoly. So was Sidney Bernstein. When we saw it coming, we thought, oh my God, if this is coming, we're getting into it. We're not going to watch it.
It was always said that Sidney and Cecil Bernstein decided to put their TV company in Manchester after scrutinising the annual rainfall charts and working out that it rained a lot more in that region than anywhere else, concluded sensibly that that meant that people would stay indoors and watch television a lot more than anywhere else.
Thanks, Silvio. Hold it. Staying in tonight?
We had certain fixed rules, no BBC people. It was thought that we should not contaminate the new growth of television with the older culture, which was, however good it was not what we wanted. We looked towards Canada, and we had scouts out in Toronto, and we had scouts out in New York.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6,
Get that sharp.
5,
Watch
4.
your focus.
Suddenly all these strange alien gentlemen in frock coats and striped trousers, bowler hats, rolled umbrellas, were appearing in the back of our of the control room, looking down on us. You know, I was trying to run a show at that time, and I said, "Who are they?" And I said, "Oh, they're the Englishmen. They've come over to lure us to England because they're starting independent television." Finally, when we got up to Manchester, where the studio was still being built, it was then when I said, "Which studio are we going to do the plays in?" And then Sidney said, "Well, we won't be doing plays for 2 years, you know." I said, "Well, what am I doing here?" And he said, "You're going to help me build this place. We'll have fun. You'll enjoy it." And he seduced me completely, and I did enjoy it.
Granada's opening night featured a program called Meet the People, in which they showed off their spanking new studio.
I didn't expect this at all, playmates. This has been rather thrust on me. But they've got this out for an hour, this piano. They've hired it, you know. And if Mr. Bernstein's plans go right up here, they're going to buy it. See? We won't be long. So they keep the cows in here at night, you know.
The opening night was murder. By 6 o'clock, it was clear that the guy who was the lead man in our opening program was smashed out of his mind. This was Quentin Reynolds, very fine American reporter, friend of Sidney's, who'd come over specially to open the station. So everything was done, like putting on a cold shower, black coffee by the pint, and so on. And by the time we went on air, he was just capable of steering an unsteady course through the studio, sticking to his script on idiot boards, which were held up in front of his face.
I want you to meet one of the fellows who is responsible for building all this vast, intricate, mysterious network of electronics around here.
All right.
In its early years, Granada put on shows that were undemanding and cheap. In those days, all that mattered was to survive.
Worth, in this game of Criss Cross Quiz, if you get it right, £100. £1,160 altogether. Who wrote Where Alf, the sacred river, ran through caverns measureless to man down to a sunless sea?
Samuel Taylor Coleridge.
Yes.
In Kubla Khan.
In Kubla Khan, it's not like Coleridge in Kubla Khan. Criss Cross Quiz for £100.
Criss shows were quite openly filched from the United States. And if it was an idea that was not copyrightable, we would create our own UK version of it. And if it were not, we would get a license. University Challenge, for instance, was College Bow.
Got a bonus of 30 coming, your starter again for 10. These people have all created works to which the same title was given. What title is it? El Greco, Gotthold Lessing, and working together, Agesanda, Polydorus, and Athenodorus.
Peterhouse Fawcett.
Laocoon. Correct, Laocoon. Painting by El Greco.
Sidney would take a pad and he'd say, this is what programming has to be. And he'd draw a pyramid like that. He'd say, you have to divide that into 3 kinds of programming in 3 equal parts. There, there, that's 3, 1, 2, 3, but each part gets smaller, and up here's that. And he said, down here are the potato shows. These are all the quizzes and all those silly shows which I never want to watch.
All alone?
That's quite right for £1.
In the middle are the meat and the vegetables.
Well. Let's see how good soldiers feel like a bit of hard work. Volunteers for spud peeling and cleaning out ablutions. 1 pace forward, march!
At the top, at the apex, smallest bit, and these are the ones he took the interest in, were such things as, of course, the drama department, or the play department, excuse me, Sidney, the play department.
I may think of you softly from time to time, but I would cut off my arm before I'd ever reach for you again.
Oh, I marvel how such a strong man may let a sickly wife...
You speak not against Elizabeth.
She is blackening my name in the village. She's a cold, snivelling woman, and you bend to her. John, pity me, pity me.
One Granada program that was both cheap and important to Sidney was What the Papers Say.
Papers! All the papers! What the Papers Say. A weekly review of the daily papers. This week, the deputy editor of The Spectator, Brian Inglis.
Good evening. Out of Hungary yesterday came one of the most moving messages that a news agency has ever received. The last signal from the British United Press Office in Budapest before the Russians moved in. Goodbye. We do not forget you. The Russians are too near. Goodbye, friends. Goodbye, friends. Save our souls.
He had to clear the script of what the papers say every Thursday afternoon before we broadcast it live, of course, on Thursday evenings. And I used to have to read it to the lawyer and then discuss it with Sidney. And shifting a comma around when you have to, and he used to try to shift commas around, but defending a comma or an adjective or a phrase or a point the programme was trying to make against the owner of the principal owner of the company was not an easy thing to do.
He had a very powerful personality, and he had various wonderful and contradictory characteristics, one of which was a great love of the arts, and the other of which was extreme parsimony.
The Granada building in Manchester was a reflection of Sidney Bernstein's personality. The walls of the corridors were hung with valuable paintings, many by northern artists. But the studios all had even numbers to make it seem there were more of them.
I'll never forget sitting in the library at Granada in my first 6 months, very quietly researching something, and the door suddenly burst open and Sidney came through it at a trot, backed by numerous men with notepads and pencils, saying, nowhere for the secretaries to hang their coats, wastepaper baskets not in the right places, aisles half an inch too narrow, bang, straight out the door again with all these men furiously scribbling.
He had his curious little objections. He was obsessive about dangling earrings on female performers, and it was always one of his first notes at any post-mortem of a programme. He checked the size of the earrings and whether they were swinging too violently so that they would mesmerise the audience.
And lest any of his staff became too high-minded, Sidney would remind them of the greatest showman of all, the famous circus owner, P.T. Barnum.
There were these two workmen who were coming around, and they were drilling onto the wall with screwdrivers a picture of Barnum. And a memo came around, and he said, I've given all of you this as a gift, and it is to remain there. And if you ever decide to take it down, your desk will also go, and so will you. This is here to remind us all that we're in show business.
In what way do you think the North are going to differ in their tastes from...
Well, they're an indigenous, homogeneous cultural group. Their roots are in the North. They're not displaced persons living in the South. I think their requirements are different. They still want the best. What's good enough for London will be good enough for the North. But they want something in addition, and I think we'll provide it.
We realized that the power of London in television was our greatest threat, and that we had to form an identity which was different from the London identity, in the way that the Manchester Guardian many, many years ago formed a different identity, and the Yorkshire Post not so many years ago formed a different identity. So we carefully cultivated the whole idea of Granada land.